Warning, this episode of James Bond Radio features some advanced level bad language, heightened emotions, and adult themes that would horrify even the most hardened of sailors. If you are prone to being offended by things you see or hear online, or are not of adult age, then please do not listen to this episode. And several of the upcoming episodes too. Listen to this at your own risk. You have been warned.
Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to James Bond Radio. This is episode 191, where today we'll be talking about the long-awaited movie review of our favourite Bond, Die Another Day. My name is Chris Wright, and with me is my main man, Mr. Tommy Sears, who looks like he's in a bit of pain. Are you all right, Tom? What's happening?
Mate,
it started.
we're finally here, aren't we? It's been a long time.
It sure has.
Dude, listen, man, before I say anything else, I've crafted an official statement that I would like to say before we begin anything else. So,
is this going to Eon as well, or not?
This is just going out to the world, to the universe at large, right? So I've taken the time to sit down and really write down my feelings in a statement before we actually get into the review and all this kind of stuff. So, okay, let me go. I've got it on my phone. Here we go. I love James Bond. I love the character, I love the books, I love the music, I love the films, and I love and respect nearly everybody involved in making them. Barbara, Michael G., Brosnan, David Arnold, Peter Lamont, Purvis and Wade, the list goes on. All of these people have my eternal gratitude, love and respect for bringing me a series of films that have deeply affected my life. For me, anyone who puts their work up on the screen deserves our undying respect, whether that film turns out to be a masterpiece or a stinker. It's all too easy for us to sit at home and critique someone else's hard work when we've offered literally nothing of value ourselves. There's nothing worse than smug, sneering, opinionated podcast wankers sitting at home in their basement, up on their high horse about something they don't have the skill or talent to make themselves. Which is why the JBR manifesto is in place, Chris. Now, the JBR manifesto states, and I quote, JBR celebrates all things 007. While JBR will by all means acknowledge the negative aspects of the world of Bond, it never dwells on them, preferring to spend energy exploring the positive and lifting Bond up, rather than taking the easy route by tearing him down. In a world where huge doses of negative energy are pumped into our ears on a daily basis, JBR's mission is to never let that seep into the world of Bond. In short, there is enough negativity in the world, so why let that destroy something we're all meant to love? Now, with all of that said, Chris, this film is fucking awful.
Right.
And I don't know how to deal with this. If I was to sum it up, man, in one sentence, it's like watching Lee Tamahori bumming your dad for 2 hours non-stop. It's that horrendous. What do you think?
Well, first of all, lovely words.
Thank you.
That you just said there. I think everyone listening fully appreciated that. It's an interesting one. I'll give you that. I think it's going to be. Well, maybe should we just leave it at that? We'll just leave it at that one sentence review, and we'll just turn off.
Let's call it a day and move on to Casino.
All right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. No, we've got to remind everyone who's listening that basically you watched Die Another Day in the cinema.
Yeah.
Obviously, when it came out,
yeah.
You watched it. You weren't sure if you actually had managed to take in the whole film because you thought it was so bad. You thought, well, it can't be that bad. I must have missed something. So you went to watch it. Was it the next day?
I can't remember.
Or a couple of days later, maybe?
Very soon later. It might have been the next day. It might have been a few days.
In the cinema again.
Yeah.
Same experience.
Yeah.
You're like, right, I'm never watching this film again.
Yeah.
That was obviously 2002. We are now 2020, Tom. That's 18 years.
I know.
That you, as a Bond fan, obviously massive, huge into Bond, that's a Bond film that you haven't watched in 18 years.
Yeah.
Now that in itself is pretty incredible, I think.
Well, it is. And I tell you how it feels, man. I feel like I've been 18 years sober and then I've relapsed and I'm feeling terrible about the world again. You know, it really does feel like that. And it
relapsed or prolapsed?
Both of them at the same time. But like I remember so well that feeling of being in that cinema and just knowing even before the title sequence happened that this wasn't right. Something was deeply wrong about this film. And you know how much we look forward to new Bond in the cinema, especially now. And I remember just being utterly heartbroken and just walking home like a dazed zombie, just shuffling, being like, how did that go so wrong? I don't know.
I can imagine you walking down the road and people just giving you a wide berth because your head is down and you're just like...
Exactly that, yeah. And it's revisiting it after 18 years. People have been messaging me, man. They say, over the years, they've been, don't worry about it, man. When you get back to Die Another Day, it's not as bad as you remember it. It's, with a bit of time. I don't agree. It's if anything, it's worse than I remember it. Really? And I don't know how to process this, man, in the spirit of JBR. I just don't know how to do it. I do think I did have a thought as I was watching it, and I was like, this shouldn't have been a film. The story, the script, the characters are just not strong enough to be a Bond film. A Bond film is a very special thing. Even when you put them in a big old ranking list and you go through them all, typically people will stick things like, I don't know, maybe Diamonds Are Forever lower down the list, or Octopussy and all those. And it's like, yeah, that's fair enough. But they're all still great, They're all still great. And this is just not. This is just not. It doesn't deserve to be in this series. And I think what it is, man, if it was like a computer game, right, that was... Because it's so exaggerated, there's so much over-the-top innuendo.
It is like a computer game in a lot of
It's like
things,
a computer game, man. If it was a computer game made for like 9-year-old bellends, it would have been perfect for that crowd, right? Because they're making it for 9-year-olds, so I get why dickhead has diamonds stuck in his face for the whole fucking film, and he hasn't bothered to just pick them out like a normal human being would. I understand those things, but it wasn't, and it was made into a film. And I just don't know. I just don't know how that happened. People say, they go, if you could time travel and you go back in time, would you go back and kill Hitler as a baby and avoid World War II, save all those millions of lives, right? And that's an interesting thought of like, what effect would that have on the world as we know it? If you had gone back and stopped World War II from happening, what would the world look like today? Would we be in better shape? Would we be in worse shape? And the thought goes to me, right, if I was to go back in time and stop Die Another Day from happening, I think I could have done it, right? Because
how exactly would you?
Here's what I would have done, right? I'd go back in time.
Yeah.
I would go to Barbara and I would say, listen, I've come from the future. Let me save you, right? Let me save you. Give me a job at Eon. I will help you from day one with this film, from scratch. Before anybody puts pen to paper, I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to be like, don't do that. No. Let's go this direction instead, right? And I think I laid the blame squarely at one person's door for this film, right? And again, I love and respect all of these people. I love all of them. But my gut feeling tells me that Tamahori comes in and that's where it all went wrong, right? It was that dude's influence. Now, I think the way you when a director comes in and you're shopping around, who should we get to direct the new Bond film, right? And of course, it's a different time nowadays. You get the name directors in, the Mendes and the Danny Boyles and stuff. Obviously, that didn't end well, but like, that's where they're going these days. In those days, it was like, okay, who's the director they're bringing in? It wasn't a big name person. It was, a working director. Right, let's talk to this guy. Let's talk to that guy. Let's bring him in. Let's have a chat, see what their vision for Bond, see if they get Bond. So question number one, they come in to the room. Barbara's there. Michael G's there. Question number one is always, what's your favourite Bond film? And they say something like, I don't know, well, to me, it's either On Her Majesty's Secret Service or Casino Royale. Both of them are absolute masterpieces. It's very hard to choose between the whole series because they're all so great and they all bring something to the table. You're like, right answer. Well done. Question number two, who's your favourite Bond actor? Well, I think, Sean Connery's probably the best, but, I also love, I love the darkness Timothy brought to the role. I love what Roger did with the humour, I love George, I love all of them in different ways. Correct. Come in, right answer. Question number three, Chris, is what do you think of the James Bonder's codename theory? And if they say, well, it's quite an interesting thought, actually, maybe we could work that into the plot of the film. You immediately say, get the fuck out of the room. Leave. Get out the door. Don't even look at me. And don't even come near this franchise ever again, right? That is something that Tamahori toyed around with for Die Another Day. He toyed with the idea, apparently, that he wanted to get Connery back and be like...
Connery back for what?
To be James Bond again, right? Apparently, this is what I've read. That he was going to be a previous James Bond and that Pierce was another James Bond, and James Bond is a code name, that thing that goes around the internet, which just makes any Bond fan of their sort fly into a rage. And that would have been the sign, man. As soon as he comes out with that, I'd have been like, just walk away from this dude. That is somebody that does not get Bond in any way. Let's just move on from that. That's how I would save it, right? But like we were saying about World War II just now, you never know what might have happened instead, you see. You might have had a better Die Another Day that was a different film, but then would we have got Casino Royale? And I'm not prepared to risk Casino Royale because that is such a masterpiece. It probably is the best Bond film ever made. And we needed Die Another Day to get to Casino Royale. So it's one of those things that I think you just had to let this happen in order for the greater good and the greater future to come from it. I've fired a lot of thoughts at you there, Chris. What are you thinking?
So what you're basically saying is Barbara and Michael G had the foresight to bring in someone absolutely wank as a director to create Die Another Day, so that then Casino Royale could be born from the ashes, so to speak.
Maybe that's
thereafter.
it. Sometimes maybe you have to clear the decks in order to grow something better and more beautiful. But the thing that pains me more than anything else is just how embarrassed I am when I watch this film. I'm embarrassed for Pierce. I look at him up there saying some of the worst lines in the series, and he just looks so embarrassed and awkward, and my heart goes out to him because I love that man. And I love what he did with Bond. And it was just such a heartbreaking end to his run. Knowing how much he loved being Bond and how much he was ready to come back, man. And and bizarrely, this film was a financial success. So it was like all the things were lined up for him to have another go. And I feel like he should have had one, maybe two more films and then bowed out and we'd have got the next dude. Again, that's an alternate universe that means we might never have got Casino Royale. So it's a very difficult one. But yeah, it is what it is.
Well, I think going back to what you were saying earlier, in terms of, well, first of all, I love it that we haven't even started the review yet. That's amazing. But I think going back, like I remember back in the day with us and probably with quite a few other Bond fans as well, we're thinking, well, hang on a minute. Purvis and Wade wrote the script. The blame's got to lay at them. You know, you're thinking about everyone else involved and stuff. And initially, obviously, we thought that. But when you hear from Purvis and Wade and what they had to say, it's the same as what Pierce had to say, is that they initially wanted it to go dark. You know, you got the torture scene and you had that sort of seed of an idea, which if they had continued down, would have been a completely different film come the second half sort of thing. Obviously, we didn't get that. And it had, like, I'm completely in agreement with you that Tamahori is the sort of, you know, the man behind the disaster that's about to follow. But saying that, I am going to play a little bit of devil's advocate.
Okay, go on.
Because there are some things in this film that I quite enjoy.
Okay.
Not many, but there are some things that I quite enjoy.
Okay.
And some things I definitely want to point out.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it any better a film, but and I'd love to have a chance to re-edit it one day, which I can talk about at the end of part 3 or something. But as well as Tamahori, I think the other people that should be kind of feel responsible for creating a dog awful film is the editors, because editing this film is the shoddiest editing I've seen in any Bond film. It's really slow, like in terms of scenes are meant to be quick paced. It's so slow and things react way too late after they should have done, and then you've got that stupid crash zoom sort of slow motion going on.
It's like it's slow motion, but sort of a bit wonky. It's not normal slow motion, is it? Yeah, it's just bollocks, really. Obviously, we're going to come to that later on. Yeah. But I think the editors, because there's 2 editors, and they didn't work on any other Bonds. I don't think Christian Wagner and McRitchie, I think, were the 2 editors.
and they only worked on this one. And for me, I can tell that they're not worthy enough editors to do a Bond film. They're it's just not there. So I think Tamahori and I think the editors are the two, because you look at who else was involved. Obviously, you look at Vic. You look at, he said obviously Purvis and Wade. You've got an Arnold score, and that's one of the things I think is a positive in the film.
I agree.
Like the Arnold score is definitely good, and the cast is decent as well. It's what happens with the script as the film progresses, and the editing and the direction is just poor. But anyway,
it's awful, man. And it just is terrible from start to finish, with a few little glistening bits that are, like you say, the score is great, and I thoroughly enjoy that. Well done, David Arnold. But
should we just leave it there then?
Let's just leave it there, mate. There's enough to be said. Right. But, so one thing I have to say, I've got to say a couple of things before we start. And number one is, some people complain about this sometimes, but it's unescapable that there will be some quite advanced level bad language through the rest of this episode. When I get passionate about something, those words just pour out of me, and I apologize in advance, but I can't help it. And if you're somebody who's offended by swearing, especially advanced level swear words, the really naughty ones, then you're not going to like this episode. So especially if you're listening with young ones, and I would suggest if you are listening with young ones, to JBR in general, that's probably not a good idea. But just turn this off now, because it's not going to go well for you.
Well, I've got a good idea. Perhaps once we've recorded it, before we send it out, we can cover every expletive with Madonna saying, "Analyze this," and then we can see how many of those there are by the end of the review. What do you think?
Well, on that note, Chris, right? On that note, I have to make a formal apology to one listener in particular, and a couple, probably more, that I'm unaware of. But I have to apologise in advance to JBR listener Richard Neves, Chris.
Yeah,
because
I thought you were about to mention Richard. Yeah.
Richard Neves, bless him, he's a big Madonna fan, and I understand. If somebody outside of our little band of brothers starts slagging on Bond or Pierce or somebody I love or Roger, I genuinely get fucking angry, right? And I will strip down to my underpants and I will be ready to fight, right?
I'm sure they'll run a mile if they do that.
I might even oil myself up beforehand if I'm especially angry if they've said something. Yeah. And I know what that feeling is. When you love something and somebody else is slagging it off, it's not a good feeling. I don't like it, and nobody else does either. And I know Richard Neves loves it. Sam Allen is another one. Sam Allen's paid money to see Madonna in concert, Chris, right? And it's like you only do that if you genuinely are a fan of somebody and you love somebody. So I have to apologize to those two and anybody else who's a Madonna fan, because I have to be honest in this review of this film, and I can't sugarcoat my feelings. And it's going to be this is going to be so tough for me. So I'm sorry, man. And please don't feel negative towards me when we see each other next, because I can't not say what I need to say about it. And so if you feel, maybe skip past the theme song bit or just don't listen.
Mate, there are so many caveats to this episode.
Oh, God, isn't there just? Isn't there just?
Yeah.
So I've said my piece. Richard, Sam, I'm sorry in advance. All right. I think that's everything I've got to say for the preamble. Okay. Have you got anything on your mind, Chris?
I think we've done enough preambling. I think we should listen to a bit theme tune and then get into it. What do you think?
All right, let's do it. Let's do some theme tune, and then we'll get cracking.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British end up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews and discussion of all things 007.
Lucy. As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007. Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Okay, so here we go. This is part one of 3 parts. Part 1 of Die Another Day, the first third of the film, Tommy. Are you ready to delve in to the deliciousness that is Die Another Day?
As ready as I will ever be, my friend.
Okay, great stuff. Well, as always, we'll start at the start. So the gun barrel. Now, we get a different variation on the Bond theme, as we do for a lot of them. For me, it's not brilliant. It's not the best, but it's not terrible, the actual variation of the theme. It's fitting with the rest of the score. I think it's all right. But there's one thing about this gun barrel that I hate. And that, I'm sure you can guess. What do you think it is? It's
going to be the bullet that pierces the screen.
That is exactly it. What are your thoughts on this CGI bullet?
All right. So I enjoy the gun barrel. And the gun barrel theme, right? I'm not really a big fan of electronic music. And it's quite an electronic-y score, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think I think it's just not less to my taste than the traditional orchestral stuff. As he walks in, you got the Bond theme, and there's that sort of like glitchy, drummy kind of stuff, electronic drum stuff going on. And I'm like, yeah, that's different. It's not my favorite, but I respect him for bringing a different flavor in, you know. And I'm like, that's cool. I'm happy he's exploring some other avenues rather than just trotting out the same old thing again. Now, you might be surprised when I say this, man, but I don't find the bullet that offensive.
Really?
Yeah, because I know it's silly, because when you think about it, we're looking down the barrel of a gun, so the bullet would have to travel down that barrel into the person that's shooting the gun, right? Which is ridiculous. It's a bit too Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, that, isn't it, where he splits the arrow, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sort of like, that's all right. I see it's a way to do something a little bit different, and I'm not offended by it. I'm like, all right. It's not something that I think is great, and like, oh, let's do that every time. But I'm not that offended by it. But you don't like it. So tell me about that.
I'm not keen on it at all. But what I will say is it suits the film perfectly. So if any film was going to have this bullet, I think it's with the right film, the right pre-titles for Die Another Day. So I'm not a fan of it, but I guess within the setting of the film, I'd stick it with this one above any other. So yeah.
All right, cool. So what is it you don't like about the bullet then? Why is that
cheesy? It's just looks crap. It's it just makes me think, what the fuck have they done? You know, that the whole point of getting the gun barrel, getting the dots, the moving dots, seeing Bond, that is meant to G you up into thinking, well, I'm about to watch one of the best things that's ever been made in cinema history. Yeah. And then they hit me with that, and I'm like, oh, fucking hell, what's going on?
It's a fair point.
So that's my view on it. But there we go. Okay, so then we open up on North Korea. Now, I do think North Korea is a pretty cool place for Bond to visit. I think, you know, obviously the political scenario with everything going on, I think it was a good place to visit. But we've got the surfing, Tom. We've got the surfing. Now, what are your thoughts about the surfing?
Dude, I remember the surfing only too well. I remember that was the first production still that was released back in the day. Before the film had come out, they're making it. I remember seeing that shot in a magazine, I think it was. And I instantly was like, oh, no. This is not right. And I'm going to tell you why it's not right. This has all the recipe to be a great pre-title sequence, but I'm going to tell you why it fails at every step of the way. Surfing is not a mode of transport, right? You don't get on a surfboard to go anywhere. You get on a surfboard to play around in the waves, right? And no more is that evident than in the actual footage you get. It looks like a random surf video. It's like, it's not showing them traveling anywhere. It's just some dudes fucking about on some big waves, which fair enough is impressive. Those big wave surfers, Laird Hamilton was the dude that did it. Yeah. He's like a big wave legend in the world of surfing, lives in Hawaii and all that stuff. That's impressive to see, right? But that's the only reason it's been done. It doesn't make any sense to have Bond surfing into his mission at all. How
did he get into the sea in the first place? Well, because he's not going to paddle from like Japan to get there or whatever.
Completely, right?
Yeah.
And it's just nonsense. And what we have here is what could have been another awesome sneaky Bond pre-title sequence. It has echoes of the Living Daylights with the 3 00s all going in together. I know the other two probably aren't 00s, but like it has that feeling. You see 3 of them coming in together, all dressed up in the dark sort of stealth gear, and you're like, yes, you failed before you even started because they're surfing. If you're going to do this, the answer is they need to come in a little sub or something, or some sort of little seaborne vehicle that they sneak in that's quiet. What should have happened, Chris, right?
Yeah, I've got an interpretation of what I think. So let's hear yours first. And then we'll
Scuba
go.
gear, little underwater fucking skidoos, whatever they're called. They're coming in silently through the water, dead of night, dead silence. You see the three, I'm going to call them the 3 00s just out of
that's
habit.
cool. Yeah.
They're all coming in silently. They surface in the water. They eyeball the coast. They're like, right, there's the guards. They wait for the guards and then they sneak up the shore dead silent. Now, bring it on, right? I'm on board for that. I am not on board for 3 00s surfing into a mission. For me, the whole film, you just know it's going to be fucked up because that is such a silly decision to make for Bond that if you've got that so wrong so early, the rest of it is just going to fall apart, surely, you know? Yeah. Anyway, what are your thoughts?
No, I completely agree. I think, well, firstly, where they're surfing, I suppose that doesn't matter, actually. No, it's just a place where they surf, basically, the waves break, but there's a channel that you could just paddle up where there's no waves that break if you wanted to get to the beach in real life. But anyway, that's a bit beside the point. I had a thought the other day that I was thinking the way that I would have done it would I'd open up on a plane at night flying through with 3 ropes from the back of the plane and the 3 00s holding on to the end of these ropes, but wearing wingsuits. So the plane is up high and then they let go and they fly on their wingsuits under the radar of the North Korean thing. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if there's a beach or not, but basically they fly in and parachute down into the security sort of bunker where all the armed guards are, and they do it stealthily. They're all in black. And then once they're there, they get the gear out and then start taking out people. That was one way to do it.
I instantly like that. You're
one as well.
You're a fan of the wingsuit, aren't you? You've
Yes.
mentioned the wingsuit before as like that's prime Bond stuff.
If it's done correctly, then yeah.
Both of those infinitely better than surfing into a mission.
It just doesn't make sense, man.
No. What makes it even more annoying is that when they get to the shore and he opens the surfboard and there's all the gadgets and limpet mines and God knows what inside, and that just irritates me even more, you know?
And what about running up the beach carrying the surfboards? That's not exactly conspicuous.
No.
It?
Where do they put the surfboards? Where do they hide them? You know, it's just, it just none of it makes any sense.
Yeah, it is bollocks, which is a bit of a thing. I suppose we've got to progress with the story a little bit. So like you said, they've got all these gadgets and things. One of them is sort of like a beacon thing that he puts in the ground to... So Van Beek's in this helicopter, isn't he? With his suitcase and the beacon sort of diverts a helicopter so it lands where Bond and the other two dudes are.
Yeah.
I quite like the whole thing that Bond's dressed up like this guy, and obviously he takes his case, he takes his sunglasses to resume his identity, and I think that's pretty cool. You know, I've got no issue with that. What do you think?
I think there's something cool about spies knocking people out, taking their clothes and going in stealthy undercover. Like again, this has the recipes, the markings of a great pre-title sequence had it been done right. So you got some prime time sneaky Bond straight away, diverts the helicopter, knocks I don't know whether he can't remember if they knock him out, but there he is already wearing his clothes. That was lucky. Takes the suitcase or whatever, and it's like, there we go, Bond's in undercover. Tension's high, right? And I'm like, I'm on board with that. That's a nice idea. It's almost like this pre-title is almost like a cross between like a GoldenEye type or a Living Daylights type with Tomorrow Never Dies with the Arms Bazaar. You know what I mean? It's sort of like a blend of those feelings for me. But yeah, okay, go on, continue. What happens next?
Okay, so basically then Bond gets in the helicopter and we see him put the C4 under the briefcase of diamonds, and they basically rock up at Moon's base. Now, I think Moon's HQ is pretty spot on with how it looks. It's got that right sort of vibe. It looks the part, and I do like the first sort of thing we have of him is in his little office, and he's basically kicking the crap out of this punch bag, which we then find out is his anger therapist, and I like that. I think that's a good little moment.
Yes, I do like that as well. Something tells me I've seen that before somewhere though. I feel like I've seen. It might be like a Bruce Willis film from the 80s or 90s. I feel like I've seen somebody in a punch bag getting the shit kicked out of them and then dropped on the floor like that. I don't know if I'm imagining it and it's just some weird little kickback thing from having blocked Diana out for so long. But yeah, it's a good idea. I do like that. That's quite a fearsome intro for a Bond villain. Yeah,
definitely. And it shows his intentions and his anger. And the fact, one thing is, he's obviously a skilled martial artist, Moon. One thing that grates me a little bit is we don't see more of that later on. But anyway, we'll come to that. And he's got a bust of himself. So he's obviously a bit narcissistic as well, isn't he? He's sort of... he's loves himself quite a bit. So anyway, so he goes outside, Bond lands. Oh, the one other thing I want to point out, in the office, he's got quite a lot of samurai gear, which made me think of Blofeld, You Only Live Twice novel, which I thought was quite
nice. I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So he goes outside and Bond lands, and then Zhao gets his little phone out and takes a photo of Bond. And obviously we don't know it at the time, but I assume he's sending it to Frost or whatever to try and identify and stuff like that. And then Moon comes out. They introduce each other, and he thinks he's Van Beek. And he talks about Moon talks about how he studied at Oxford and Harvard. And do you think he had a bit of Inga Bergstrom in Oxford, or
maybe? I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that would have been around that time. Yeah, if she was still teaching there in 2002. Yeah.
And then obviously he's got all these. He studied in majored in Western hypocrisy, but yet he's got all these Western supercars. So he's a bit sort of contradictory in terms of what he is. And then Bond basically hands over the diamonds because he wants to see the weapons. And then all these hovercrafts and guns and everything turn up. I think this is quite a cool bit as well, actually. I do like all these sort of hovercrafts and that whole sort of military sort of setting. Like you said, it's a bit like the Arms Bazaar feel, isn't it? You've got all these sort of rocket guns and grenade launchers and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool. But Zhao obviously finds out that Bond is an MI6 agent and informs Moon. And then Moon basically blows up Bond's helicopter so he can't get away, and basically says to I think that's when his dad calls up, isn't it? General Moon sort of says, "Oh, what's going on? Why is there a fire?" And so Moon basically bricks it and tells everyone, right, clear the weapons and kill Bond. Now we get to the point where Bond's about to be shot and he sets off the detonator, blows up the briefcase of diamonds, and we get the diamonds in Zhao's face. Now, obviously, you pointed out earlier, you're not a fan of this. No. Are you a fan of the idea or not at all? No, really? Because I actually don't mind it. I like really? I like the fact it gives him this distinctive look. But as soon as you said, why didn't he just take them out of his face? I thought, why doesn't he? Well, that's maybe they're in too deep or whatever. But
because it's like, oh God. Oh my God. I despair of it, man, because
really?
That it's so just trying to be something that's Bond-like, and it's just not, man. You get diamonds embedded in your face that are right there. You just pull them out, you know? It's like that. There was a phase, like a fad for a while called vajazzling, didn't it? Where young ladies would get little diamonds like glued onto their nether regions, as for God knows why they thought it
looked cool. And pajazzling as well, wasn't there?
I don't know. Is that something you've dabbled in? I don't know. Chris, right, with his pajazzle.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's like that. He's just got a vajazzle on his face, and you could just pick him out, you know? And it's just there to look cool.
But how about if it happened in terms of the case exploded, the diamonds went in, but next time we see him, he's just got loads of holes in his face, like pockmarks from where the diamonds were, but they weren't actually there. Would that work for you or not?
That's one of those things, isn't it? Where when you have a Bond villain, you go back to Fleming, you have a Bond villain or a henchman, he always liked them to have some sort of disfigurement or something about them physically that was a bit sort of like not straightforward. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, like the scarred face or something like that. That's a great idea. Like having that. That would have been better. I think it's so cartoonish and so comic booky that it's like, this isn't Bond, man. There's so many things about this that's like, this belongs in a different film, in a different franchise, and for me, that's one of them. Maybe the diamond should have gone into his eyes and blinded him in one eye or something, so he had a freaky eye like that. if you have to have that, because that he's a handsome dude, isn't he, man?
Yeah.
That face is very like chiseled, and he's a very strong looking man.
He is, yeah.
And yeah, so as a henchman, I guess you have to fuck with that a little bit. But to me, it's just silliness. But I'm glad you like it. That's all right.
I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean. If that happened in a Marvel film or whatever, and someone rocked up, then you'd go, okay, fair enough. So I do know what you mean, and maybe having the diamonds taken out, but just loads of marks all over his face would have been a better way to go. But.
Do you know what? You would need a better script, definitely. But if this was the Lego Bond film that we've talked about so much over the years, that would even make sense. Because if you watched like Lego Batman, again, it's that over-the-top sort of Adam Westy type Batman, and that works in that setting. It's a kid's film, you know what I mean? I could see that, diamonds in the face of a little Lego man Zhao. I could get on board with that, because it's made for the kids. But yeah, anyway, I digress.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on, obviously, we follow this with a bit of a hovercraft chase. So Bond basically takes control of one of the crafts and goes after Moon in his big hovercraft, and obviously there are a few of them. They go across past all the mines. He's got to avoid machine guns and flamethrowers and grenades and stuff like this. What do you think of the chase?
Don't like it, right?
Okay, tell me why.
I'll be honest. And I remember sitting there in the cinema watching this for the first time and being like, this just falls so flat. The way it's filmed, it just looks so scripted. And like when you look at something like the Thames boat chase, that is a masterpiece of a boat chase, right? That is brilliant. And this is just sort of such a lukewarm, not even 5% as good as that boat chase. Bond deserves better than that. And it's almost like, oh, here's a bit of flamethrower, Bond's got a duck now, and then he's jumped, and there's a mine, he's going to shoot the boom, and it just doesn't feel like a real chase. It feels like it's choreographed. It feels like you're watching a show at Universal Studios or something, and it's like, oh, let's go and see the Die Another Day hovercraft show, and everybody's sitting in the audience, and then this hovercraft's run. Like, you just know it doesn't feel real in the least.
Yeah.
And I'm not thrilled by it at all. And just watching Pierce climbing around.
There's no suspense at all.
No,
is there?
Watching him climbing around that hovercraft just isn't thrilling. It's like this whole film feels like a sort of like D-rate Steven Seagal action film that was just made for straight to DVD.
Seagal. Wow, that is
D-rate for Seagal, right? So in the grand scheme, probably Z-rate, but like, it was like straight to DVD. Nobody ever really saw it kind of action. And I hate to say it because I love all these people involved in it, but it's just not worked this time.
Do you think that was solely down to them using hovercrafts, or do you think it could have been sort of directed in a better way? Maybe if there was more sort of hovercraft smashing into each other, rebounding, going through trees, stuff like that, really hard hitting and stuff like that. Do you think that if they did something like that, it would be better?
It's not the hovercrafts I've got a problem with.
No.
It's the execution of it all. And I think it's just the way the whole thing has been directed. It just looks like some of the moving on to other scenes where there's just dialogue going on. It looks like one of those really cheesy American daytime soap operas, like The Young and the Restless, that was on BBC Two at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever. And the acting feels like that as well. I made my missus watch this with me. I said, listen, if I'm going to do this, you've got to come with me, right? You've got to help me through this and hold my hand. And the amount of time she picked up her phone to start scrolling Instagram, and I was like, no, put it down. You've got to suffer through this with me. And she was horrified by this film, man. She used to work in the movie world herself years ago. And she said, this is the worst directed and worst written film I have ever seen. And I'm like, I kind of agree with you. I can't think of much that's worse than this.
Yeah, that's I guess it's hard to argue. Obviously, there will be people that do argue that because, in fact, wasn't there a couple of people we found out and Die Another Day was their favourite Bond film?
Yes,
back in a while. So there are people out there.
There's probably maybe 3 or 4 people that I've spoken to over the years that have said that's their favourite one.
Yeah.
All the power to you. Don't let me spoil it for you, right?
No.
You carry on loving Die Another Day. I'm not judging you. Nobody should tell you what you should and shouldn't like. All the power to you, my friend. It's just yeah, this is my feelings and your feelings, obviously.
And I tell you what, I agree with you about the choreographedness and everything like that, but the actual middle of the chase, for me, seems like a piece of art compared to the end of the chase, where obviously they get to that point where they get towards the waterfall and Bond jumps up, grabs the rope for the bell ringer, and the Moon's hovercraft falls over the edge, and then the bell rings and he does the line, and it's excruciating.
Yeah, the way some of that's shot, man. When he does the jump, it's almost like he's Superman taking off. Like you just see his body close up in the frame, and it just moves up like he's literally just done Superman. And then, and then he's hanging on to that fucking bell, Chris, and just oh god! And he says, "Saved by the Bell."
Yeah.
No, it's horrendous. And then General Moon shows up, Daddy Moon.
Yeah, Daddy Moon.
He takes one look over the edge and goes, "My son is dead. You've killed my son," or whatever. It's like you. How do you know? He might still be alive down there. He clearly is. Are you at least going to send a couple of men down to check? You've just already decided. All right, fair enough. Let's just leave him to it. He's probably still alive, but he's going to drown now because you can't be asked to look for him. Yeah, that's my pre-title sequence experience. Now, what I think is also what this could have been was something so exciting, like the concept of Bond being captured and held for 14 months, long hair, beard, Brosnan full Jim Morrison mode, and tortured is great. I'm like, this is precisely what we need in Bond. Freshen things up, put him in new situations we've never seen before, and that's definitely one of them, right? When you look at the Brosnan era, I feel like most people are in agreement that they were very formulaic. GoldenEye, masterpiece. Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough. It was kind of like they were very much treading the same water. It was like, we got to hit these hit points. Boom. Still love them, right? Great films. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, they're not up there with the Casino Royales and the Majesties and the Goldfingers of the world, right? So it's like, this would have been the perfect point. You've established Bond, Pierce is a successful Bond. You've had 3 bang-in pictures. Let's try something a little bit different this time. And I was so excited for that. It's like when you saw Bond puking in Casino Royale. You're like, whoa, you've never seen Bond in that sort of situation before. This is so new and different. And then we had that as well. But yeah, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but that whole sequence is great. I like the idea of him being there and being waterboarded and all that kind of stuff and tortured and looking like a bag of shit, you know, and like not he's not sitting there with one eyebrow up like coasting. He's genuinely in peril there, and I'm like, whoa, that's some new shit. How do you feel about that whole thing?
So I think it's a really cool idea. Obviously, we've never seen Bond sort of in this situation before. Bond being tortured, you know, his face getting slammed into the ice water. We see these scorpions. I really like the sort of torturer, the female sort of scorpion guard or whatever she's called. I think she's got a great look to her, and she looks evil. You know, you wouldn't want to be in a room with her when she's sort of dishing out the punishment and stuff. So I think it's good. I like the sort of you get sort of a bit of ice and a bit of flame, and that reminds me a bit of Largo, Thunderball, obviously, heat and cold. So I like that. Visually, I think it's pretty good. There are a bit of CGI things going on with some of the scorpions, but I think it's the actual visuals of the title, I think are pretty cool. There is another matter.
Yes, there is, and that is the song. Now, Richard Neves, Sam Allen, please just fast forward this for 10 minutes, please.
Yeah.
What an abomination this song is, man. Oh my God, it's awful.
I was thinking, like, while I was watching it, how cool will it be to have sort of a Chris Cornell type vibe with the song backing to those sort of hard-hitting titles?
Well, that's it, man. What you have, let me just get these godforsaken lyrics up on my phone, right? what
It's
you've
not
got
many,
there
are there?
is you've got Bond. Let's forget the surfing. Let's forget the lackluster pre-titles. What you've got here is something else new, which I'm excited for. Let's try something else here. We've got the story continuing through the title sequence. That's a great idea. And having Bond's torture, the 14 months almost like shown for you throughout the course of the song. Great idea. Like, I like the way you're thinking there. So that there's some seeds of something really great and different. But then you put this not even half-baked abomination over the top of it that has no sense of atmosphere or doesn't fit anything in any way over the top of it, and you completely neuter the whole thing. Chris, I'm going to take you through the lyrics.
Right. Let's do it.
I'm gone by the first fucking line. I'm going to wake up, yes and no. Okay, well done. Line number 2. I'm going to kiss some part of. All right, Bond's a kiss, kiss, bang, bang man. Maybe that sort of works on some shitty level. I'm going to keep this secret. Okay, spies and secrets. That's all right, Madonna. You can have that. This is my favourite. I'm going to close my body now. What does that mean? How does one close their body?
Which part of the body are you talking about?
Well, it could be any of them, Chris, really.
Yeah.
I guess die another day. 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 I guess I'll die another day. Another day. She does that like 8 times. Here's another banger. Sigmund Freud, analyse this, analyse this, analyse this. What's
That's
Sigmund
my favourite
Freud
lyric, that one.
got to do with anything to do with Bond? This is so fucking lazy, man. It's like, do you have any concept of what an honour it is to join the pantheon of Bondian artists, right? You go back and you look at some of those amazing songs, man. You Only Live Twice is an otherworldly masterpiece. It's brilliant. Goldfinger, man. World-shattering. Diamonds Are Forever. Live and Let Die, for crying out loud, man. These are all absolute top-level, amazing, timeless masterpieces. And this bird, she gets the job and she's got some shitty little demo she literally shat out the last weekend, stuck it in a drawer and not done anything with it. And she's like, that'll do. I'll just change the chorus so it says Die Another Day. She's not even tried. And that's what angers me, man. The arrogance of it. She's not even tried to even make it fit in any way. I'm going to continue. I'm going to break the cycle. I'm going to shake up the system. I'm going to destroy my ego. I'm going to close my body now. Okay. If that had any relevance to the plot, like there's one film where Bond gets analysed by a psychologist. I can think of a couple. Maybe you could skate that in, right? It's not really the main theme of any of those films, though, so it's still my thing. I think I'll find another way. There's so much more to know. I guess I'll die another day. It's not my time to go. All right. For every sin I'll have to pay. I've come to work. I've come to play. I think I'll find another way. It's not my time to go. Now, do you know what that is, right? Songwriters usually write like a scratch lyric where they're just improvising, trying to find a melody, and just random words will fall out of their mouth just as a placeholder before they sit down and write the proper words that go over the top. Now, if you look at Chris Cornell's You Know My Name, every word in that song has meaning, right? You know, it's so well thought out and fits the plot so perfectly. I'm like, Cornell, I had no idea you were so well suited to write a Bond song, because to me, he was in a different universe to Bond. When they announced Chris Cornell, I'm like, what on earth is that all about? Never saw it. The song comes out and it's just like, those lyrics are amazing. This, she's done a scratch lyric, man. She's farted these lyrics out onto a page and not bothered to improve them at all. I am so gutted and offended and just outraged at the lack of effort put into this fucking thing that I can't go on, Chris. I just can't go on.
I think we had a serious sort of dearth of potential sort of bands in terms of the ones that submitted tracks for Die Another Day. You know, you had the Beyond the Ice and a few others that came in. They were all like a pile of steaming dog turd.
Yeah.
That doesn't make this one any better.
No. No.
But there must have been other. I don't understand why there wasn't like other
Literally
options.
anything would have been better than this, man.
Yeah.
Anything. It's just, I suppose the thing is for me as well is I like good people, right? In the sense that one of the reasons I love Roger so much is that he was such a good-hearted man. You know, all those stories that came out about him after he died, of the kid in the airport and all that kind of stuff. I'm just like, that is such a good-hearted man. And that should be celebrated. And anyone you find out who's like that, Keanu Reeves, there's another one. You never hear a bad word said about Keanu. Everybody who meets him says he's just such a lovely man. And I'm like, that makes me want to go and watch every Keanu Reeves film ever made. I want to make sure that dude carries on being a success in whatever small way I can play in that role, because he's a good man. And then you have I don't know, who's an asshole? Ellen DeGeneres, she's been in the news recently. Apparently, her daytime TV show, she's a monster behind the scenes and just a really nasty piece of work. And I'm like, fair enough. Get rid of the woman. Like, nastiness. There's no need to be like that. Be nice, right? And I don't know, man. I think my disdain for this is just doubled with Madonna. I saw her on the Graham Norton show once, right?
What, around Bond time or not?
I can't remember what, it was probably way since then. And it was just, there was these two fellas in the audience. I'm guessing they were a couple, right? And they'd had these dolls. They'd had Barbie dolls, and they'd made the dresses themselves of like some famous Madonna outfits through her career. So they're sitting in the audience, and then Graham brings up the dolls on stage and like shows them to Madonna. And it's like her outfit from this video, her outfit from that video. And I get it, right? In the sense that if somebody came up to you, Chris, and said, I've made this doll of you, Chris, look, here's you in the outfit that you did this in. You'd be like, all right, you'd probably take a step or two back a little bit, and you'd be like, oh, that's really nice. Inside, you'd be like, maybe this is a little bit creepy, but, you know, I'm going to put a smile on it. Instead of doing that, she made it so obvious she thought they were total losers. Like, you might be able to see the clip on YouTube or something. Her whole demeanor was so horrible and condescending to these poor dudes. And they obviously worship her. And I'm like, that's not the way to behave. You know, that's just not the way to be. That's not, you wouldn't get that from Roger. If you'd given Roger an action figure, he'd have raised an eyebrow and a smile, and he'd have made a quip about it. And that's all you'd want, you know? And she was just so mean to them that I was just like, oh God, that just makes me dislike her even more. You know, it just, oh God, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen that clip, but I'm, you know, people that get above their station and everything like that, which happens a lot in that industry. It's, you've got no time for people like that at all.
Again, who the hell am I? You know, Madonna is a legend, you know, has sold millions upon millions of records.
Yeah, but you don't have to be an arse. It doesn't matter who you are. Just don't be an arse.
There you go. You don't have to be an asshole with it, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this song, man, oh God, it's just utter shit. And it's just, it has no business being anywhere near Bond.
I think that's a good way to put it, because I agree with you completely. I also know other people like the song, but whether they like it or not, I don't think it should be anywhere near Bond. Because you can like a song, but if it's not related to what it's meant to be a part of, then it shouldn't be there. So no problem with people. Obviously, people can like what they like. Everything's subjective, but it just doesn't go, and it shouldn't be there. And so, yeah, I agree with you on that 100%. Yeah. Should we roll on? Or?
Yeah, let's please. I'm really hoping there's something positive that I can talk about. But
okay.
Go on. Carry on. What's happening next?
Okay, so post-titles opens up on The Torturer's Eyes 14 months later. We see Bond, like you said, long hair, beard, looking absolutely sort of, you know, he's been tortured for the last 14 months, not looking great. He's taken to General Moon, who basically sort of tries to get him to say a bit more, you know, tries to get him to spill a bit of information, but Bond keeps quiet. He's and this is a part where he's about to be taken out, and he thinks he's going to be executed, isn't he? Now this actually, I do like this scene, I must say. So he first of all he goes to see Moon, and then Moon says that his son had an ally in the West, and asks Bond who it is, and Bond says that he doesn't know. He kind of tells General Moon that whoever it is double-crossed Bond and sort of put him in it. But that whole setup where so they've got that bridge. It's obviously got the fog and the mist and everything, and because General Moon's a nice guy, you can tell like he's a stand-up guy. He's not like his son or whatever, but he basically tells Bond to step forward, and as he goes, all the guns are sort of lined up on him, so he thinks this is it, and the music's not like works well in this scene, and Bond starts walking, and then he hears all the sort of the soldiers turn and go away. And I like that, because at that point you think obviously he's not going to be shot. It's a Bond film, but I like there's a bit of tension. I like the music. I like Bond thinking that this is it for him. You know, he hasn't given up any information. He's going to die for his country, which is, you know, his job basically. Yeah. And I like that, and I like it a lot.
I do like this scene as well, like because that's again, that has the feel of like real espionage. Two people being traded over a bridge. The fact you don't know it's happening. I like the feel of the mist over the bridge, so you just don't really, you're not sure what on earth's happening. Zhao comes out of the mist, and I guess again, in the way it's written is the tricky bit, is when you feel the audience have to be told everything, it kind of just takes away the power. So obviously he's being traded. We don't need to Bond say, I'm being traded. Like, he literally says that, and I'm like, oh, you've just diluted what could be a really strong scene, you know. And yeah, so there's that. But yeah, I do like that. That's a nice touch. That is a fragment of what could have made the film, like could have been part of the better film in the other universe where this never happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
What do you think about Michael Madsen?
As an actor and other stuff he's done, I think he's great. For me, in this film, it doesn't quite work. I'm not quite sure what it is. So obviously, Bond gets to the other side of the bridge. Robinson is there, and Madsen as Damien Falco is there, and he's got that line, "Oh look, it looks like some kind of hero." Obviously, one that AJ got his title from. I don't know. I think, there's not a lot to that character really. I think it's quite it's basically, I do like the sort of anti-Britishness, because I think that's good, and I think that's kind of needed. The sort of bit of rivalry, but almost like America's the big daddy, you know, Britain's nothing really, and which is the case in the real world. So I do like that. And I do like Madsen as an actor, but I'm not quite sure of the character.
Do you know, it's a funny one. As I look through the film, I just feel like there's so many choices that's been made that just don't fit with what Bond is or should be. And he's one of them. Like, again, I think he's great in all the Tarantino things he's been in and all the different things. He's always great. But he doesn't belong in a Bond film. That's like, it's maybe he would if the part was significantly different, but that's such a minor role that just needed to be some other actor that you didn't recognise.
Yeah, it takes you out of the film a bit, doesn't it?
It does.
When you see him.
That being Michael Madsen is such a why is it him? Like, had he been the mole or something, maybe. But even then, I just don't think he has the right flavour that suits Bond. Likewise with Halle Berry, man. I just don't think she's Bond girl material. We'll get to that later. But like, that's such an odd choice. And I think I remember reading somewhere along the way that the Falco character was thought that they would bring him back at some point and he'd be like a regular person that shows up throughout later films. But yeah, so he's a funny one. But yeah. Yeah, go on then. Carry on. What happens next?
So basically, obviously, Bond then gets injected, and we see he's in this sort of rehabilitation room. The sort of doctors are checking over his vital signs. He's got a resting heartbeat of 72 minutes, which is actually quite high, particularly for someone that's lying down. I suppose he's just been tortured for 14 months, so he perhaps isn't in the best of shape. But like a couple of seconds later, it's down to 60 when he's standing. So it's a bit weird. But I guess they wanted to show the whole being able to bring his heart down. But anyway, that's a small thing. But so they say there's indications of scorpion venom and anti-serum inside him. So they'd obviously sort of inject him and then bring him back afterwards. The whole liver not good. Oh, it's definitely him then. it's all right. It's all right.
It's a bit obvious, though.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's a bit. Yeah, it's
That's
a bit
the
in your
thing.
face.
It
but
does. It raises
there's too
a
much
smirk,
of that.
but
Yeah,
it's a bit-
exactly. It's all right. It's
you know.
all right. And then M comes to see him. So this is quite an interesting bit. So obviously he's got that sheet of glass between them. M comes to see him and sort of say, she basically thinks that he divulged information, and Bond's like, no, never, I'd never do that. And she said, well, under the influence of drugs, you wouldn't have known what you were doing. And Bond says that he knows the rules. And this is quite a good bit. So she said his freedom came at too high a price. Obviously, the trading for Zhao had killed like a number of agents, hadn't he? But I do like the fact that Bond tells them that he threw his cyanide away like years ago. That's a good little moment, because as we know, every agent gets their cyanide tablet and whatever, but he threw his away years ago, which I think is quite a cool thing. But equally, the Americans think Bond broke because one of their agents was assassinated inside, and then Bond basically tries to say, well, whoever set him up is the one that gave away about the American agent. And M actually goes inside the chamber as well. And do you remember what Bond said is the number one rule? He said, there are no deals. Get caught and you're given up. What do you think? I think that's a pretty good thing.
This is a funny one, because I don't know why M is so mean to him, right? Because he's just been through this horrible thing. He's come back, they've traded him, and she almost resents the fact that he's been traded because Zhao has killed 3 Chinese agents at this meeting, and she deems Zhao more valuable than Bond. And then in the next breath, she's saying, so she's all like angered at him for dishing out the secrets, which he didn't do, obviously. And then in the next breath, she's saying, well, you wouldn't have known what you'd have said anyway. So why be angry at the poor bastard? If he's completely unable to know what the words coming out of him are because he's all drugged up, then surely you understand that it wasn't his fault if that was the case.
That's a good point.
The tricky thing is, for me, with this, is that all the relationship you've built up between Bond and M in the last 3 movies, you have Evil Queen of Numbers in GoldenEye. They don't get along. They have that amazing M scene in GoldenEye, man, that's up there with the best of them. And she fucking puts him in his place, and it's brilliant. And then when he leaves, she gives him that little smile and says, come back alive or whatever. And you're like, there's that little glimpse of humanity that you needed to know that she's not just a nasty bitch. She cares, and she's a rounded character. And you're like, brilliant. Then in Tomorrow Never Dies, she's a bit more like, a bit more playful.
Yeah.
World is not enough. To another level, she's in prison. Bond rescues her. She's imprisoned. Bond rescues her. There's that whole thing between the lecturer and her past and all the rest of it. The bond between Bond and M is really tight by that point. And in this film, it's like she doesn't give a shit. He's just another agent that she doesn't give a shit about at all. And there's no warmth whatsoever. Completely in this case, for a reason that was completely out of his control anyway. So that's for me, that's such a strange thing. And this, man, when you watch this scene again, this is one of those where I feel really embarrassed for Pierce, because some of the lines he has to say are so clunky, man.
They are, and it's not his fault, because I know people have a go at him. But if the script isn't there, you can't. Obviously, the classic line, you can't polish a turd.
Yeah.
And if the script isn't there, you can't do anything with it.
No.
And he's given some atrocious dialogue.
At the end of the day, he's in there on screen, but he's got the director there telling him what he wants from the scene. So on some level, it's not in his control. It's like the director wants this. Okay, I've got to give him this. The words are fucking awful, so I'm just going to do the best I can with what I've got. And when you watch that scene again, this is what made me feel like The Young and the Restless, those cheesy daytime soap operas. The way, like, when Bond sort of turns away from her and then kind of looks back, and it's, in those shows where it's like, the wife finds out the husband's cheated or something, and then he's there and he's like, don't leave. And then she walks away all dramatically and pauses in front of the camera with her back to him. And in the shot is like her in the foreground looking, and he's in the background like this. And she's crying, and they're having this dramatic conversation that's just so overdone and silly. It's like that, man. It's like soap opera acting and soap opera directing. It's not their fault, man. You've got Judy in there who's great. You've got Pierce who's in there who's great. And it's just the material they're given, man.
That bit where he points at her and says about, that it doesn't work. I'm completely with you in terms of when I watch that, I kind of wince inside. I'm a
Yeah.
bit like, it's just such a shame because obviously you don't want it to be bad.
No, and it's he's been told to do that, and it's and inside he's thinking this is a bit shit, but all right, okay, and like I can't remember the line, but he's like, so I'm going to go after him and points, and it's just like, God, this is painful to watch. Now, the next bit, right, the whole cardiac arrest thing, lowers his heart rate. If I remember right, that happens in the Goldfinger book. I'm happy that there's a bit of Fleming in there. If I remember right, in the Goldfinger book, obviously, it's not the laser table. He's on a table and it's like a big buzzsaw that's going up between his legs.
Buzzsaw,
and it's like he's there. He's accepted the fact that he's going to die. So he basically tries to make himself pass out so he doesn't feel the pain. He's accepted that it's going to happen. And he does that breathing thing to try and lower his heart rate so he passes out. And then he's not going to be, he's not going to be awake during the slicing. So I'm like, all right, that's a nice Fleming touch. That's cool. So that's all right.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you think?
No, I think it's pretty cool. I think as an agent, you need a variety of skills. I think if one of them is your ability to lower your heart rate so you can pass out or go into cardiac arrest, obviously it's an extreme ability, but in certain situations it's required. And I think, to use that as a cunning way of being able to make some form of possible escape, I think was a really, really good idea. And I like that scene, and I like that whole thing because I've done a bit behind sort of breathing and breath control and heart rate and all that. And it is an interesting thing what you can make your body do when you do a bit of practice and put your mind to it. So I'm completely behind this scene. I think it's great. Obviously, the alarm goes off, the cardiac arrest, the nurse and the doctors come in, and we get the whole defibrillators, and he's about to shock him, and he brings him back, and then straight away Bond grabs him and shocks the two doctors. Yeah. And then tells the nurse, thanks for the kiss of life sort of thing, which cheesy.
She gives him that like, ooh, sort of look, doesn't she? Which is very old school, which it's as cheesy and silly as it is, it does make me giggle because it belongs to that era of Bond that I love so much when he's a rampant lovemaker. But yeah, so I think that's quite a nice little moment. And that's that cool little bit. So as he's escaping, we hear the little radio beeps that are in the start of Dr. No. Did you get that in the musical theme? I didn't. I didn't notice that actually.
Yeah, no. That's a great little bit. So the very start of Dr. No, before it kicks into the gun barrel, we get those strange sort of radio signal type beeps. So that's woven into the cue, which I think is brilliant. I absolutely love that. Obviously, there's a lot of throwbacks to previous Bonds within this, and I think that is one of my favourites.
I'll have to look out for that in another 18 years when I watch it the next time.
Obviously, Bond then leaps off the boat and he rocks up a Hong Kong yacht club. Now, there's a little moment here that I like. So he's climbing up this ladder, and there's something really, really cool about the way that he jumps off the top of the ladder onto like the deck or the platform, or whatever. I
sort of know what you mean, actually. It's like in a pose.
It's really strange, but it is cool. There's something about it. And if anyone hasn't noticed this, go back and watch it. It's just Pierce climbing the top of the ladder, and he just kind of does a mini leap off the top step or just before onto the thing. And the way that he lands, he just looks, it's a classic thing about Connery, walk like a panther. Yeah. Pierce almost lands like a panther, like a big cat.
That's a good
and he just looks really, really cool. And I like that moment.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, that's a nice little touch. Now, this bit, again, I kind of like it in the sense that there he is. He's in his gym jams.
Yeah, that is kind of cool.
Looking like an absolute bag of shit. You or I in that situation would be like, oh God, I've got to sort myself out some way. I can't go in there looking like this. But that is a testament to Bond's supreme confidence, whereby he just strolls into that super posh hotel, covered, like dripping wet. He's not even buttoned up his gym jams. He's walking in there. And I watched this bit with the subtitles on because some of the background extra chit chat as he's walking in is quite funny. And there's like one guy that goes, "He's not even wearing a tie," as he walks
really?
in. Like so you pick up on all of those with the subtitles. And I do like the confidence with which he swaggers up, and the guy is like, do you even have a credit card or any luggage and all that kind of stuff? And then Chang comes over and he's like, Mr. Bond, the presidential suite. Again, like that's like a nice Roger moment. You know what I mean? That I appreciate things like that. That sort of humor hasn't been around for a while. And I do enjoy that. Yeah. What do you think?
No, I really like this scene, and obviously, well, you mentioned Roger Moonraker. He has the presidential suite, doesn't he? So it's that nice little moment. Yeah. Because the guy gives him such disdain when he looks at him, doesn't he? He's like turns his nose up. Oh, who are you? Have you even got passport or luggage or whatever? Yeah. And then Chang comes to the rescue. I think it's classic Bond. I think it's really good. Did you catch the name of the hotel?
No.
The Ruby Eon Royale Hotel. Now, Ruby Eon, 40 years, 40th anniversary. Okay. See what they did there?
That's
very
clever.
Good.
Yeah.
And then obviously Royale, which I thought was quite cool. Basically Bond sort of asked for his tailor, asked for some food. And what does Chang tell him? I think, lobster, quail's eggs, and the seaweed. And then Bond orders a Bollinger 61 to go with it. And I thought that's a bit strange. I was like, if it's the 40th anniversary, why not the Bollinger 62? It just seemed...
That's a good point. Yeah.
It seemed very strange for me.
If there's any reason for the 61.
And then we see him upstairs in his hotel room. He's looking completely different. He's obviously had to clean. He's having a shave. He's in his sort of shirt and stuff like that. He's looking pretty dapper. And then Peaceful Fountains of Desire shows up. So what do you think of Peaceful?
Do you know what? We missed an opportunity here, Chris, because when he opens the door and she says, I'm Peaceful Fountains of Desire, I want him to say, well, of course you are. That would have been a nice little throwback.
Yeah.
It's old school in the sense that she comes in, she's like face down on the bed, and then he just comes up behind her and starts nibbling her ear and running his hands.
He loves a nibble, doesn't he, Pierce? He loves a nibble.
He does like a nib. And I'm like, that's like the Bond of old, isn't it? It's like, Bond goes into a room and Felicia just comes out and says, I've been sent to entertain you while, Mr. Stromberg, you wait for Mr. Stromberg. And then they just start macking out. And it's like, oh, man, those were the days. And it's a bit like that. But obviously he knows what's going on.
Yeah. Gets a gun out of a garter, doesn't he? Yeah.
Throws it in the mirror. There's the three dudes in there, Chang and the two other guys. I like that. I don't know. I would have liked some hint that he knew something was up first, though, because it's so out of the blue. I would have liked maybe he gets in that room, he does his shave, and then he does the cursory check around for cameras, and maybe he sees a camera somewhere and he's like, okay, I'm being watched. And then that gives us a bit more to work with rather than he just knows somehow. That.
Or even just a subtle look at that mirrored cupboard.
Yeah,
like he could be having a shave, maybe looking in the mirror, looking at the mirrored cupboard behind him, just sort of, and it holds on it for that second longer than it would normally do. And you think, okay, he knows that.
That's all you would have needed. And it's, in Goldfinger on the plane where he does the shaving foam and he opens the thing, runs his hand through and you see the little gap. So he knows he's being watched. Like just something like that, I feel like we just needed that little something.
There we go, being watched while he's having a shave, and that's exactly the same scenario, isn't he? And I like the fact he uses an ashtray, because obviously in Tomorrow Never Dies he uses one, doesn't he, in the sort of fight with the bankers.
That's right,
Well, not with the bankers, with Stamper and that
TV
lot.
Studio,
And obviously very From Russia with Love, with the cameraman and everyone filming him about to do something, which I thought. So there are a lot of little nuggets in here which I really like, and I think this is one of the better ones. And I do like this next bit. So obviously Bong tells Chang he's always known he's been Chinese intelligence, and I really like this line. So Chang goes, "Hong Kong's our turf now, Bond. Yeah, well, don't worry about it. I'm not here to take it back." I really like that. That's probably one of my favourite lines in the whole film. I think that's a brilliant line.
The bar is not high, but that is nice. And I love Pierce's delivery of it as well. Like it's just like, he can't even be asked,
Not here to take it back.
That's a really nice thing. Because obviously in real life, the 0-10 Raymond Benson book was set around this time as well. In 97, the Brits owned Hong Kong for like 100 years, I think it was. And then in 97, it went back to the Chinese. So this is 5 years after that, isn't it? So that's still within the the conversation happening in the world.
Yeah.
I guess you know, like what's going to happen to Hong Kong now the Chinese are in charge again. You know.
It definitely gave me a smile, and it's a clever little line. I think that's definitely one of the better ones.
Yeah.
So basically, Bond then asks for help to try and find Zhao. He wants to go into North Korea because that's where he thinks he is. So he goes down to reception, and he's given a passport and a flight ticket to Cuba, and he's informed that Zhao is in Havana. And then Chang says, "If you find him, say goodbye from us." And then Bond says, "With pleasure." And we get a nice little line there. Yeah. So I think that whole hotel scene is probably one of the higher points within the film. I think that the swag, the off the ladder, the swagger walking, the sort of some of the classic old school Bond tropes in there. I like that. I think it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we head off to Havana with a cracking music cue. I can't help but it's a great little music cue, that one. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but apparently this is the first of 2 Mickey G cameos in the film. The second one's really obvious towards the end of the film. So he rocks up and he's walking past across a road past a load of people, and there's a guy standing leaning against the bonnet of a car with one leg up. Now, I've seen this in loads of websites saying, "Oh yeah, that's Mickey G." I was watching it on a Blu-ray. I haven't got a 4K TV, so it might not be in the highest def. But I paused it and I sort of went right up to the screen to see, and it didn't look like him to me. I'm not saying it's not, because loads of people are saying it is, but it didn't look like it was him. So I don't know if anyone's got like a super clear screen that they can just get a screenshot of this guy. He's wearing a hat. So you can't. Okay. His face is in a bit of shade. But he's leaning against a car behind Bond as Bond walks past, and it's one of those things where, it probably is him, but it's just I couldn't quite see it when I looked up close.
Do you know what? I didn't spot Mickey G at all, and I don't. Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that. We can.
No.
Yeah, JBR family members, check that out. See if we can work it out.
Yeah. So then he rocks up at this cigar factory, and he asks for delectados. So now apparently these weren't actual cigars. Not like prior to this film, no cigar had ever been called a delectado. So it was made up purely for the film, and obviously it's a code word for Raul. So it's like a code word for the sleeper agent. But after the film, it then became a cigar. And so because of the film, people started making it and stuff like that. Which I thought was quite interesting.
Nice.
Nice little bit there. So he's taken to see Raul on this sort of rooftop. And what are your thoughts of Raul as a character?
Do you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Indiana Jones.
It is a bit.
When he goes, I forget the character's name now.
Salah? No.
But you know who I mean, where he's like, Belosh.
Yeah, Salah.
Like, yeah. That it almost feels like the same set to me.
Yeah.
I do like he feels right. You know, it feels like a Contact Bond would go and see. It feels like a Bond film, you know? So he goes there, and he basically is trying to track down where Zhao is, and he's like, "Oh, who is it? A tourist?" And I want to find a North Korean. Who is it? A tourist? And he kind of helps him out and all the rest of it. Nice. I like Bond going to see a contact like this. He's almost like a little mini Kerim Bey or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they go to his office then, and he finds out that Zhao's on this little island called Los Órganos in Cuba, just off the southwest of Cuba, I think it is. And so this is quite an interesting bit. So obviously he tells him about there's a gene therapy clinic run by Dr. Alvarez, which is meant to be a bit sketchy, and we get this bit where Bond picks up a book from the shelf. Now, this book is a field guide to the birds of the West Indies by a certain James Bond. And obviously, everyone probably listening to this knows this. It was the book that Fleming took the name from for our obviously famous character. And you can see that the author's name has been scratched out on the front. Yeah. And then when he flips it around, there's a couple of little reviews of the book. And one of them says, Mr. Bond's a guide or whatever, so you can see that it says that. But I think that's quite a nice little moment, and he uses that for his cover. So he takes the book, he asks Raul if he can borrow his binoculars and his gun, and then he obviously needs a fast car as well. And I think this is good because he asked for a fast car, so everyone thinks he's going to rock up in, I don't know, an Aston, a Bentley, whatever it might be, and then he ends up in this Ford Fairlane old school style car, which I really like, actually. What do you think of that?
I mean, that works on several levels. Because Cuba is that, isn't it? It's famous for having all the cars there are like super old cars from the 50s or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I do like those kinds of jokes whereby you expect Bond to be driving like the cutting edge car of the time, and then when you put him into like the 2CV in For Eyes Only or something, or when he gets in Jack Wade's little tiny thing, whatever the hell that was, it does raise a smile, doesn't it, when you see that? But yeah, I do like that. It's funny to see Bond with a revolver. You don't really you see that in Live and Let Die, I think, don't you?
Yeah.
I think that's the first time you see him with a revolver, if I remember right. I'm not sure if you've seen him with one since. Actually, is that the only time he uses a revolver?
I don't think I can think of any others.
Let's put that out to the JBR family. If you can think of any other time that Bond's used a revolver since Live and Let Die, let us know. Big cigar. What do you think? Do you think the cigar suits him?
This is the other thing, because obviously in Tomorrow Never Dies, the pre-titles, we've got that guy smoking, filthy habit, punches him, boom. Same Bond actor, and now he's been talking about these dictados, which are seriously bad for your health because they continue burning, Flora, tobacco, whatever it is. So it's not good. And then we see Bond smoking cigars on a couple of occasions in this film. A, do you think he should be smoking given the circumstances, and a bit more modern day? And B, do you think he looks good smoking? I guess they're two different takes on what it is. Obviously, Roger loved a cigar, didn't he, back in the day? What do you think?
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
It's a funny one, that. I think we talked about this many moons ago about Bond smoking in the modern day. For me personally, I've never been a smoker. It's not a thing that I find remotely appealing. But there is something about it that does look cool for some reason. I don't know why. You go back to Connery and You Only Live Twice with his rocket cigarettes and stuff, There is something about that. And there's something about those old sort of gentlemen's clubs, casinos with the leather chairs and all that stuff.
Glass of port in one hand, cigar
and
in the other.
Smoke in the room. That's it's a really old school, like evocative feeling, and the smell of that, and M with his pipe. And Roger looked like a badass with a cigar, in Live and Let Die, especially with it when he's in the hang glider. It's just like, what badass, man.
Yeah.
So I'm not averse to it. Now, I think if I remember right, we were discussing whether Daniel should smoke. And I found a photo of him with a cigarette, and he did look cool, man. I personally, I think smoking's gross, but there is something about it that does look cool, and I don't know what it is.
And Daniel does obviously smoke for real, in real life, and I've seen a few shots of him. In fact, when we went to see Roger, with the second time I met you, in fact, I think it was 2008. You were there with your bro, and my mate came along too, and we went to see Roger. And do you remember they had those photo frames on some of the columns around the place? And there was one there of Daniel, who was topless, just smoking a cigarette, and he'd cut, and he was really shredded, and he looked bloody good in that. Look cool, didn't he? Yeah, very cool indeed.
Yeah, so there is that. Yeah, it's so I think. It's one of those things. I think if you take Bond it's one of those things, man, in the sense that obviously the idea is, you don't want to encourage young people to smoke by having James Bond smoke, and people to aspire to be like James Bond. So we don't want them to pick up that habit. I guess that's the logic of it these days.
Of course, yeah.
But at the same time, like near where I am, there is a park, and every weekend you see 10 teenagers sitting down in the corner, and they're all smoking, and it's like. Yeah, they're like 15 or whatever, and it's like, you silly little shits, you know what I mean? They're gonna do that regardless of whether Bond smokes or not. So it's like, I think it's a bit too nannying. Do you know what I mean? It's just let Bond do his thing, and if somebody wants to copy him, then
in which case
that's not going to be the excuse that makes them smoke. No, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it anyway, and whatevs.
And in which case, do you think Pierce looks good rocking a cigar?
No.
After all of that.
No, I think he looks a little bit awkward with one.
Yeah.
I know he does smoke cigars, though. He's talked about it in interviews before,
Yeah.
where, you know, at the end of a night, he's got a whiskey with his mates and they'll have cigars and stuff.
It's not quite the same as Rog smoking one, though,
No,
is it?
but I don't know whether it's just because this scene that's coming up is so horrendous that it's just made worse by the fact that there's a cigar in it, or the cigar just feels a part of the horrendousness.
Yeah. So basically, he then goes to this hotel, El Gran Palacio Hotel, goes to the bar. It's sort of a beachfront hotel, isn't it? Goes to the bar, orders a mojito. He's got his his book about birds of the West Indies. He looks across at the island of Los Órganos, and then he catches something in the water, and through his binoculars he sees Jinx, and it's so over the top. Obviously, trying to homage to Ursula Andress. In Dr. No, she just walked out of the water and she didn't have to do anything else. Here, you've got the flicking the hair, the slow mo, all this.
It's like
stuff,
a fucking shampoo advert, man.
It really is. It really is, and it is shocking. But it pales compared to what follows in terms of the dialogue. I think the scene that follows for me is the most awful sort of two-way dialogue in the whole series. It's I almost wanted to puke up when I was listening to it. It's just it is just fucking terrible, and like it does make me annoyed, because how can they think it's going to be good and get away with it? Okay, you can have a bit of cheese and you can have a bit of humour. Yeah. But don't push it to the max where you're talking about, you're a big boy and wow, there's a mouthful and bloody hell.
It's just so embarrassing, man. It's embarrassing. It's what this should have been is one of those great scenes where Bond is flirting with an adversary. Holly Goodhead is a perfect example of one that goes well. Yeah. That back and forth, similar setup. Holly Goodhead is Bond's sort of opposite number in the sense they're both on the same mission after the same people and they're level pegging all the time. I think that's a brilliant relationship and it's executed perfectly. I always think about how Bond is always sort of thinks he's one step ahead, but she's level pegging the whole time. When he gets out of bed with her that night, as soon as the door closes, her eyes are open and she's up as well. And it's like, Goodhead is brilliant. This is just... It's like every line in this film is just this awful innuendo. It's just so cheesy. It's
like it's written by little teenage kids.
It's
isn't
exactly that. I was going to say it's like you're at middle school, and the teacher said, "Okay, class," and you're teaching 10-year-olds. "Okay, class, today we're going to write a James Bond film. Go for it." Yeah. This is the sort of shit that would come out of that class, man. It's just horrible.
What do predators do at night? They feast. It's
God.
But it is painful, isn't it? It really is painful. But the reason it's painful, not only because how bad it is, because it affects us internally as Bond fans when we see something that is embarrassing and shit. Because this is something that we... Well, it is. This is something that we put our name to. This is something that we're proud of in terms of, the character, the series and everything. And then they deal up stuff like that. And it's so tough to take.
Like I said earlier, I don't think Halle Berry, in the same way that I don't think Denise Richards really belongs in the world of Bond. It's like, I'm happy to have them. And if I was to ever meet them, I'd be like, that's cool. I met them. They were in Bond. But for me... I don't know, there's something about the American Bond girls, with the exception of perhaps Tiffany Case, that just never seems to land quite right for me in the world of Bond. When I think of a Bond girl, I think of some sort of they have to have like an exotic accent, which is why I think the French ones always do so well.
French do very well, yeah. And the Scandinavians in terms of...
Literally everybody else is great. But I don't know, it's just, it seems so obvious and so... Halle Berry just doesn't. I look at her, she's obviously beautiful. She's a movie star, Oscar winning, right? Amazing. I just don't think she fits in Bond. It just doesn't seem to work for me. and yeah, this whole scene is so forced and such like middle school dialogue that it's just horrendous. And where it gets worse, man, is the following sex scene.
Yeah, I was gonna.
I do not need to see Bond's cum face, man. I do never want to see that. And I remember this was a big deal. I remember this was a big deal at the time because this is the first Bond film you see sexual movements.
Properly
you see
gratuity,
the thrusting.
isn't it?
You know, you see all of that. Bond even does the post-jizz giggle. You know what I mean? I don't need to see that. It's Bond. I love the man. I don't want to watch him doing that. What I need to see is them macking out at the beginning, fade to black, then they're sitting up in bed afterwards. Yeah. That's what you see in a Bond film. You do not see the grinding. You do not see the jizz face. It's just beyond wrong in every way. And the words she says to him, man, they've just finished, and she goes, "Are you always this frisky?" Oh, what is that? Yeah. What is that, Chris? No. Are you always this frisky?
It's bollocks. That's what that is.
Oh,
like you said, it is school kid writing. But you got to think, you know, when Tamahori's directing the scene, is he thinking, "Man, this is an absolute brilliant scene. Look at the tension between them. Oh, people are going to love this. Look how intense they are and passionate." And I don't know what he was thinking. I just do not understand. It's awful. It's so awful.
It's so awful. It's like I was saying at the beginning, when you have to ask those questions of your directors. Favorite Bond film, codename theory.
Yeah.
That's such a good measure of like who you're dealing with, because you know when sometimes you meet people and they say, "Oh yeah, I'm a Bond fan," and then there's this little sort of jostling that happens between people like you and I and the people listening to this podcast,
throw
and
little
them,
testers and
where
stuff
it's
like
like
that.
Okay, most people like Bond. Where do you fit in the pantheon? Are you a casual fan? So they might say something. Yeah, I really like the books, and you go, "Oh, all right. You're a bit serious, okay." Yeah. And then if at any point they say something along the lines of, what was the one with the volcano in? You know what box they're in, and you're like, okay, casual fan, right? Fine.
Do you not then go straight in with, well, can you tell me the code, the passcode to get into the lab in Moonraker or something like that?
Gibbers word, wouldn't he, bless him? Yeah, so you know what you're dealing with, and it's like, okay, who sang? Who is it that did the theme song to that? You know what's going on.
Yeah,
okay, casual fan. I know the level of my geekery that I can reveal to you now.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, that is a brilliant way of putting
it. and there it is. Yeah. But then when you're level pegging with the details, and you're like, okay, here is a brother from Langley. You know what I'm saying? And it's you need to test these people who are making these films about what they know. And it's I just feel like this dude doesn't get Bond. He doesn't get okay. Here's another parallel with the Bond books. I've always said of the recent ones where it's been like one writer per book until Horowitz came along, I've enjoyed all of them, from Trigger Mortis, Solo, not Trigger. What was the first one? Devil May Care. Sorry, being the first one. Devil May Care,
Carte Blanche,
and all those ones. Solo, loved them all except Carte Blanche, because when I read Carte Blanche, I'm like, this doesn't feel like Bond to me. There were some things I liked about it. I liked his villain. I liked his Bond girl, but his Bond did not feel like Bond to me at all. It just felt like some sort of generic spy, you know, Tom Clancy character or something. It didn't feel like Bond. And I'm like, I don't think he's all right, but he didn't really do it for me. And I think Tamahori is that. I think he just doesn't really get it. And you compare that with somebody like Charlie Higson or Anthony Horowitz, who love Bond as much as we do. And they have all those little details down and they know it inside and out. That's the kind of person you need for this. It's like with David Arnold, man, in the music. Like, that dude lives John Barry, and it's like he serves up a brilliant score every single time. He's not done a bad one. And it's like, those are the kind of people we need. Tamahori, I don't think really knew Bond at all. Really, you can't have done to have dished up this film and think it's good.
One way that I think of it is, obviously, when they're casting a new Bond, as everyone knows, they do the classic two scenes. They do the bedroom scene from Russia. They do a fight scene. Now, obviously, when they're going after a director, normally it's the director's back catalogue that will entice them, is to say, right, clearly you're the director we want. We've looked at your work. Boom, contract, signed, done deal. But there should still be that little bit where, how about you just direct an action scene, you direct a love scene, you direct a whatever, just a couple of little things just to show their style. Yeah. And then, great, okay, you got it, brilliant. If you're like, well, I've directed this scene, I want to put in some CG waves over here. And then, what was that? What? Hang on a minute, what? Yeah. And then you're like, right, okay, sorry, nice to meet you. Here you go. Good for your time. Bring in the next one. And like, obviously, with the Bond actors and well, cast in general, maybe they should have a process like that. I guess it's difficult because directors are obviously the stars of the show in terms of directing the whole production, but there needs to be something in place to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I think maybe that's one way to do it, even though it never happened. But
fucking hell, Chris. I found today quite stressful. I really have, and it's awful. I take no pleasure in this. I really don't. I genuinely would just love to skip this review, but I know our listeners would be outraged if we were.
But they've been waiting a while for it. That's for sure.
They have been waiting a while for it. That's largely thanks to me delaying it for as long as I can.
So this is obviously part one. We're going to do 3 parts, followed by the 90-second review, as we always do. First third of the film. What are your overall thoughts? Need I ask? Is that silence range?
Oh God!
There are some moments. There are some moments.
Very few, very far between, very small. Usually, we say the first bit of the film is the strongest bit, don't we? It's like I've always thought that the final act of a film must be the hardest one to get right, because usually most films like this devolve into just mindless action, and it's like action, tie up all the loose ends, game over. And with the amount of action films we've seen over the years, outside of Bond even just within Bond, how do you come up with something original for that now that's not been seen or done somehow before?
It's tricky,
So I think that's the most challenging bit. It's easiest in the sense that everything's got to come together. You know what that last act has to do, but how do you do it in a special way that is really satisfying? And the first act that sets it up is usually the strongest bit. You usually have a bang-in pre-title sequence. You usually have a bang-in set piece or two, and then you move into the second act. This I am so interested in the development of this film because there's a on the extras there's a documentary called From Script to Screen that I watched. It's about an hour long.
Okay, yeah,
and it's really interesting, man, to see where they were at. And it's like this crew going around asking various people about, what are you working on, blah, blah, blah. Chris Corbold's on there, for example, talking about special effects. Terry Bamber shows up quite a lot, so that's nice. That's fun. Good old Terry. And a lot of them seem to have no idea what they're doing. Like the best one is when he goes into the costume room and talks to Lindy Hemming, and she's chatting about, and then it cuts to some other dude. I don't know who that dude was, but he's like, you probably can't use this because I've literally got no idea. I don't know anything.
What's his job?
I can't remember exactly what he was. It was around the time when he might have been part of the costume department. I can't remember, but it was around that time in the documentary. And then there's loads with Purvis and Wade. And they're talking about having just come back from Christmas, and they were like, neither of us had a Christmas really because Purvis says something like, "Oh, we had to start all over again on the script," or something. He doesn't say that, but it's something that alludes to basically they spent all of Christmas just nose to the grindstone rewriting everything. And Wade sort of like backtracks a bit, and he's like, "What? No, it wasn't really like that. It was just a little bit of a polish." But you get the idea that they didn't have Christmas because they rewrote everything. And there's a lot of talk about how when the director comes on, there's a lot of changes that happen and all this kind of stuff. And I would love to read some of those early treatments.
The pre-Tamahori day script.
I would love to see pre-Tamahori, post-Tamahori, and see what happened there. Because I remember even there's an interview with Pierce while they're making it. and he was talking about how they're doing something where they're breaking the formula this time. They're doing something really different, and how exciting that is. And he's describing a film that is totally different to what we've got. I'll have to dig that out, see if I can find that interview. He's describing a film that sounds great, but is nothing like what we got. So on the one hand, I really do like the little fragments of things that were brave. You know, I like them thinking differently about Bond being captured and seeing him in a situation we've literally never seen before. 14 months behind bars, Jim Morrison beard all messed up and being tortured and all messed up. I like the fact that they're like, let's do something different with the title sequence this time. Let's have the story continue. All of that is great. Brilliant. Bring it on. I'll have that. And then it's just, it's not like it devolves, because it didn't start very well either. But it's just these tiny glimmers of something that we could have had that we didn't.
Like that whole bit on the bridge as well, with the exchange and the potential execution. That was a great.
The exchange and the execution. Yes, that's part of a different film that could have been great. You know, and then it's almost like they would like, let's do something different, and they wrote something cool that was gritty and harder. Tamahori comes in and he's like, I don't want to do that. I want to do a balls out, atrocious disaster Bond from start to finish. And they've just kept a couple of little glimmers of that script. And, you know, Bond has a shave and immediately it just devolves into just ridiculousness. I do, that one line in the hotel room about him not here to take Hong Kong back is nice. I do like that. I like Pierce's delivery. But I think for me, overall, the thing I really struggle with the most is just how uncomfortable and awkward Pierce looks with some of the stuff he has to say. It's like, I feel like he had to know that this wasn't very good, you know, and it's just, at least I hope he did.
I was going to say, so not if, like, without wanting to diss on Pierce, do you think that's definitely director or script rather than Pierce just not quite pulling it off? You think no one would be able to pull it off in terms of...
No, I think that's the thing, right? It's if you have a banger of a script, and okay, so here's an example then, right? Looking on the other side of that, if you look at Majesties, you've got an inexperienced actor, first time on the job, and you've got a great script and a great movie, right? You can help him through that inexperience. I thought George did a great job. He is obviously a bit stiff at time to time, but when it's his first job, man, I think he did a bang-up job. Slight stiffness coming on. A bang-up job, right? You can do that. If you've got an absolutely horrendous script, you can take the world's greatest actor who's won an Oscar for every film he's ever done, stick him in this, and it's still going to be shit. Yeah. And it's that, I think, is what you've got here. It's just abysmal. And I really don't understand the people who've messaged me and said, don't worry, it's not as bad as you remember. Because it is, man. It's just terrible.
What happens if part one is the best of all three parts?
Well, I happen to know it gets a whole lot worse from here, dude. Oh, God. It really does. We all know what scene I'm thinking of right now. And
let's not go there just yet.
That's coming up. But let's save that for the 2 additional episodes we've got to do on this film.
Yeah.
But yes, and I want to say, I really take no pleasure in doing this, because it's one of those things, like I say, enough negativity in the world. It's so easy to shit on somebody else's hard work. And I hate to do it, but I also, out of respect to the podcast listeners, I have to be honest. I can't pretend that this film is anything other than what it is, you know? And I just, you know, Barbara, if you're listening, I know you tune in every week. She's been asking for this review for months now. She's been years, I should say. All those emails. I say, Barb, you got to wait for as long just as everybody else. You know, I fandom can get really toxic sometimes, you know, like when you look at all the Star Wars stuff. I mean, no harm or ill will towards anybody involved in making this. It's just purely the product itself, you know.
Well, the 2 biggest things are script and direction. And if you don't get either of those, let alone both of those right, it's going to go downhill. And when both are a stinker, then there's nothing you can do, really. But on that bright and cheery note, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Indeed. What do you think? It'll be interesting to see how it goes, obviously, part 2, part 3. But I think overall for me, part 1, there are some bits that I think showed potential. There are bits that I enjoyed, but there were also some bits that I just it's just they were illogical. Why were they there? It didn't make sense. The surfing, everything like that. But then you've got that whole bit where as soon as we meet Halle Berry, suddenly it's like I'm really not going to enjoy this.
No.
And the dialogue, man, is just terrible in so many scenes.
Yeah.
But so there we go.
There you have it. I tell you what, man, this has been such a stressful experience for me. I need a little bit of cheering up. So I think it's been a long time, man, but I think it's time for a bit of.
Who wrote the score for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt? How did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
There we have it. Tommy Trivia, man. It's been a while. It's been a long time. I find myself missing these little games, and I thought it might be nice to have a little light-hearted play towards the end of what's been a devastating episode.
You know what? I'm so glad you suggested that because it's been ages and I really enjoy them as well.
Good.
Okay, so I don't know if you've forgotten the rules or not, Tom, but we have 6 categories and you can choose which one you want to start on. So we have casting characters, the films, vehicles, gadgets and weapons, locations, or crew and behind the scenes.
I'm going to do gadgets and weapons, please.
Gadgets and weapons. Okay. The first question is, what gadget does Bond utilise to locate the stolen nuclear warheads?
Geiger counter.
Yes!
Okay.
A Geiger counter in what form? For an extra point. Do you know what film, first of all?
It's got to be Thunderball, isn't it?
It is Thunderball, yeah. He uses a Geiger counter, but it's within an everyday accessory.
Oh, shit. What is it? Is it a watch or something?
Yes, it is. Yeah,
that's right.
It's Breitling watch. Yeah, nice one. Brilliant. Okay. Question 2. In what city does Bond get pursued through the streets by a Jaguar CX-75?
Gets pursued through the streets?
Yes. I can give you the film.
Okay, give me the film.
So, Spectre.
Oh, of course. What a dickhead. What's the question? What's the city?
What? Yeah.
Who am I? What's my name? What am I doing here? What was the city? Rome, of course.
Rome, indeed.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff.
Fucking hell.
Okay. In what year was License to Kill first released?
1989.
Brilliant. Perfect. 3 out of 3 so far. Casting characters now. What role does Sophie Marceau play?
Electric King.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness gracious me.
Beautiful. Okay. Next one. Who sent the golden bullet inscribed 007 to MI6?
Well,
yes.
We were led to believe it was Scaramanga, but it wasn't Scaramanga, was it? It was, of course, I didn't recognise with your clothes on. It's Anders.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, brilliant stuff. And final question then. We've got, this is locations. This is vehicles. What is the name of Stromberg's Ocean Laboratory?
That would, of course, be Atlantis.
There we go. Excellent.
Yes.
6 out of 6. See, you've
did
not
all right
lost
there,
any of your skills or ability.
Thank goodness for that. I thought my powers would be drained after this episode, but it's been all right, isn't it?
It certainly has. But
yeah.
I kind of feel like I want cheering up now as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Why don't we have... how about a go of... Bond. James Bond.
Oh, I would love to. It's the guest quote round, of course.
Yeah, God, that seems like so long.
All right, let's do it. I've got a quote for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if you can get it. All right, everybody at home playing along.
Yeah.
Put your hands back in your pockets.
Mm.
Once more, the quote for this week is, put your hands back in your pockets. Any ideas?
I like
Chris?
it. Am I answering in this episode for next
No,
one?
we'll save it for next week.
I think you've nailed it if I think it's who I think it is, but equally it might be someone else.
All right.
That's a really good one.
Nice.
That's a really good one.
To give you a little bit of a hint, it's me rescuing myself from the depths of despair by quoting a really good Bond film.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
There we go.
Sounds
All right
good.
then. So For my sins, JBR will return next week with Die Another Day Part 2. Can't believe I'm saying those words.
Rest
It's
on
been
your
so long.
sins.
Until then, I've been Tom Sears.
I've been Chris Wright, and we look forward to part 2 next time, everybody. Well,
See you
we
later.
look forward to. Can
I'm
we
dreading
say
it.
that?
Dreading
Is that,
next week.
Are we legally
basically.
allowed to say that?
Dreading next week. All right, everybody. We will see you then.
Take care.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night.